Welcome to Clapback Get the Facts podcast, where we are providing you with the information you need to know about what's politically impacting Black women across the country. In a world filled with mis and disinformation, we provide you with the real. If you're a Black woman, representing Black women, or in the community with Black women, we are here to clap back and give you the facts. Thank you for joining episode 12, Sisters Making History, Jeanna Repass, Chair of Kansas Democratic Party. We are grateful to be sitting down with her. We will be sharing the facts and dropping gems. So let's get ready to clap back at the facts.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Clapback Get the Facts podcast. My name is Holly Holiday. Not only am I your host, but I'm also the president of Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote. Today, we are embarking of the first of a series of activities. And let me tell you something, we can actually do this series every week because Sisters Make History. Today, we're going to be speaking with Jeanna Repass, Chair of the Kansas Democratic Party. Like I said, we have so many history moments happening every day in this country led by Black women. We could literally do this podcast, this specific series every single week. But today is the kickoff. And of course, you know I'm not here by myself. I'm here with my good young sister, Vibrant. We've been beating up on Ohio, but today we're going to move to Kansas. Simone Henderson. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, I'm ready for my state to get a break. I've been tired.
We've been having a lot of conversations about Ohio, but we are still in the mighty Midwest. Both of us being Midwesterners, this is so close to our hearts. And so without further ado, let me just tell you today, you know, I fan over different kind of people. And I'm going to tell you today, I'm going to be in my fangirl moment. I have the distinct pleasure to not only brag about my neighboring state, but to welcome the first Black woman chair of the Kansas, that's right, y'all heard it, Kansas Democratic Party, Jeanna Repass. And let me just say that I know I'm a little bit biased. Growing up in Kansas City, I felt like I had my feet in two worlds. So this is like my home, my adopted home. You know, we definitely went over there and did all the things. But we think it's important to understand that Black women's leadership, political leadership, plays in every single state. So today we are here with Chair Repass to discuss the political landscape of Kansas, Black women running for office in Kansas, and the experience of serving as its first Black woman chair. Welcome, Chairman Repass. How are you?
I am so honored. You're fangirling. I'm fangirling over you. I'm like, am I nervous? I think I'm like, what do I do with my hands? These two beautiful Black women are
The
here.
good news is we all sisters, and we are just going to have a good time, have some good information, make sure folks are exposed and aware, maybe even raise a couple dollars. But the most important thing is we want to know exactly what it is. I am fangirling out. It is so exciting. I can't wait for the people to hear about all of the incredible work. So let's get into it. Let's start with this. I suspect most people don't know about the political landscape in Kansas. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that most of our audience may not be aware of some of the fantastic things politically happening in Kansas. Can you give us an overview?
Thank you so much. Yeah, let me be clear. Dorothy Gale from The Wizard of Oz is from Kansas. People don't know Superman is also from Kansas. Clark Kent right here. Any Ted Lasso fans, he's from Kansas. But let me be very clear. The other things happening in Kansas. Number one, we were the first state in the nation to vote after the Dobbs decision, reversing Roe versus Wade. And Kansas came out and said resoundingly that we believe that people have the right of autonomy over their body, and we supported and reinforced the right to an abortion in Kansas. And I'm going to give you this little background, a little deep dive here, though, as my daughter would call it, the B side here. The amendment was put on a primary ballot because in Kansas, Democrats don't always vote in primaries because we don't typically primary each other. So the Republicans thought they'd sneak this amendment on when Democrats didn't. So those would be clear. But what people don't know about that is they were trying to amend the Constitution. Kansas was founded as a free state. And what would happen is when enslaved African Americans would come to Kansas, our Constitution was written by abolitionists that said every person had the right of personhood so that they couldn't be re-enslaved or taken back into slavery in other slave states. So the piece of the Constitution they were trying to amend was the piece that gave Black people the right to their own bodies. And by amending it, they would be able to take away a woman's right to autonomy over her body. So Kansas, then, not only did we have it in our Constitution, but we reaffirmed that every person has the right over their body, including women. And that's how we were able to protect a woman's right to an abortion in this state. So a little bit of that deep dive.
I love that. I love that. And obviously the shenanigans did not work because Kansas was, in fact, as you mentioned, the first state to pass it. And I should note here that many of our conservative friends thought this would be the test case to prove their position. And it failed in Kansas first. And let's be honest, it has been failing ever since. And I would like to say, and maybe this is overstretching it, but I would like to say that Kansas was the catalyst for ensuring that reproductive rights is not on the officially adopted platform of the Republican National Committee that was adopted just Monday during the RNC convention. And I would like to think that Democrats and the good voters of Kansas had a little something to do with that. What do you think?
I would agree with you on that. We will take it 100%, because it wasn't just that it was Kansas. It's that we are a red state. And
that's
what it
right.
showed was that this was an issue. This is an American values issue, not a red or blue issue. So when it happened in Kansas, people were like, oh, wait, hold on. So we're happy that we were the first. We were happy that we were that bellwether. And we're really proud of it. Yes.
And I think it's hard, and you bring up a great point, because as much as we will definitely get into the Democrat politics of it all, but I think as much as it is about, party plays a huge role, especially when we're talking about presidents and state legislators and other things that are closely aligned to the party system. When we talk about values and issues, most of us are much closer together than we think. And I wonder if recognizing and seeing that, did that create an opportunity? Did that help you in your decision to run for chair? If not, how did we get there?
Well, I was actually on the ballot in 2022. I was the first ever African-American woman in our state's 161-year history to be nominated for a statewide office. I was running for Secretary of State. I was the nominee.
Yes, you were. You are. I have you on my list. Thank you for reminding me about that. Good. Yes. Continue.
Which is where I became aware of you all to begin with. So it's a fangirl both ways. Yes, I was crisscrossing the state, talking about voting rights and the importance of these free and fair elections, and making sure people had access to the ballot. And so I was out stumping at that time. And I will tell you, part of that led me to believe that there was more service to do. And to back that up a little bit, I'm the daughter of a civil rights activist. My mother started sneaking out of her house at the tender age of 14 to get in the streets and make change. And I grew up in a household, she and my father, instilled in us that this country was our responsibility.
Yeah.
No one was going to give you anything. You must take it, but you also must give. You must give in order to receive. And so I knew I would always go into political service. This is how I choose to serve my country. And so after I did not prevail in that Secretary of State's race, but I will say, as a first time ever candidate, I fared as well as our former incumbent lieutenant governor who was running for state treasurer. We basically missed by the same margin. And the governor of our state, wonderful, strong woman, Governor Laura Kelly, looked at my race, got to know me on the trail, and asked me if I would run the state party. And I was honored to do it. I did have to. It was a race, though. I came straight out of one race into another. The mentioned former lieutenant governor also ran to be the state chair. So it was actually kind of a contentious election. It's funny how Democrats tend to fight really hard against each other. Just saying.
Sometimes. But then also sometimes it helps us to solidify what is the best outcome for us all. And I think that's what happened in this case. I love this story, and I love the civil rights. It sounds like you were born into good trouble. I know Simone is biting to ask questions, so let me lead her in here a little bit. Go ahead, Simone.
Absolutely. And Holly and Miss Chantel couldn't join us today. I get it. I get a lot. I've been out of Ohio and another red state. So I was like, please, thank you. Thank you so much. And then Ohio following suit with what Kansas was able to lead us towards with solidifying women's constitutional rights in the state of Ohio. But being the first in to lead that, being the first in your position is never an easy feat. And as you said, that the race was contentious. What was that like in a state like Kansas, where people don't perceive or may have misconceptions about what Kansas looks like demographic wise? What was that like, being the first to run and to win this office?
Well, what was interesting about it was that there were people who voted for me and supported me as Secretary of State who then turned on me when I was running to lead the state party. People were fond of saying to me on the campaign trail, "Oh my gosh, you inspire me. You're such a great speaker." And I was just speaking a message of hope and patriotism and our right to vote. And they loved that. But then when I was running against, and I'll just be very candid, it was a white male who I was running against for this role. I heard things like, "Oh, you give great speeches, but you just can't lead the party. You're such a great candidate, but this needs someone who can fundraise. This needs someone who can lead." And I'm thinking to myself, all of you are about to vote for me for Secretary of State.
And let me just say thank you for giving us classic examples of microaggressions in the political sphere. So any of you all listening who aren't necessarily clear about how it shows up, thank you for giving us some very clear and cogent examples. Every single statement was absolutely an example of a microaggression that we see publicly playing out for us all the time.
And I would love to take it back to, we did an earlier episode on why Black women's leadership is normally challenged. And one of those major points was the ability to fundraise. And that was an episode. So thank you for uplifting
You're
that.
welcome. Well, and I'm proud to say that as the chair, we have raised more money than the state party has ever raised in our history.
Listen, that's what I'm talking about. Because the reality is, and again, I'm going to be thanking you this whole episode, I can tell. These are myths. These are not facts and they are not truths. These are myths. It is a myth that Black people can't raise money. It is a myth that only Black people vote for other Black people. Myth, 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 myth. And we are tearing them down. That's why we call this show Clapback, Get the Facts, because we want people to recognize leadership is leadership. And Black women, leadership done well, not only leads ourselves, our families, our community, we lead everybody. And you are a classic example of that. And I'm so glad that we get to share your story today. Simone, did you have any other questions? Because, I'll just get right into it.
I'm building off of that and what that race looked like and how you talk about what your candidate looked like. As other and Black women look to Kansas and other Democrats look to Kansas, what are some lessons on how you ran your race that you would offer up to build this coalition that shows up, shows out, and places women in Black women in other leadership positions in Kansas?
That's a phenomenal question. Thank you. It's unsurprisingly, my first answer is going to be authentically you. Mm-hmm. You are enough. You do not have to be anyone else. You do not have to be Vice President Kamala Harris. You do not have to be Michelle Obama. You do not have to be Jeanna Repass. You just be you because you are enough. And, one of the things I talk about is if you want to run with natural hair or braids, you do that because that's your authentic self. If you have, as we would say, a little AAVE in how you speak, don't change that. If that is your authentic self, be your authentic self. And that is enough. So that's the number one thing I would say to any Black woman, because people will always come in with an opinion about what you should wear and how you should dress. And listen, the longer I'm in politics, I get lots of opinions. But you start, you start with that base of be authentically yourself. And then number two, I'm going to tell you, be bold. There's no place, and we know this intrinsically as Black women, there's no place for timidity anywhere. I have this conversation with my daughter all the time in so many circles. You stand in your truth and be bold. I've mentored a couple of candidates. One beautiful, she's running for the Senate, and she had trouble looking me in my eye when I first met her. And it wasn't that she was insecure, she just wasn't used to it. And I said, square your shoulders and look me right in the eye. You're enough. Square your shoulders. And then number two, go into it with the attitude you can win. As a matter of fact, I'm going to win. You have to understand, other people come into politics with almost a sense of entitlement, that they know it belongs to them. You need to adopt that attitude. Go into it saying, I can win, because there's going to be a lot of voices around you telling you can't. The can'ts are going to come at you like a wave. You walk into there with an I can, I will. And then everything else will fall in place.
This sounds like you've been whispering in our president's ear. I think he's bringing that spirit too. So he might have been listening in on your conversation. Listen, I have to know, you won the race, you run the race, and then you ran another race, and you win the race. What is the vision that you want to bring to the Kansas Democratic Party? What is it that you think is going to help guide them into the future? And what are some of the things you hope to accomplish?
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, and this is a bit of a sidebar, we have more women of color running in Kansas. Like there are 18 women, or 18 Black women, and I think there's 20 people of color. We've even with Latinas, I'm reaching out to everyone. So that was one of those seed changes. It's like Kansas needs to look, all of our politics need to reflect the entire electorate. We'll start with that. But the other thing, I've got a great challenge in Kansas. We have a Republican supermajority in both of our chambers. Even though we have a Democratic governor, our House and our Senate have supermajorities. She can veto something, which she does, and they can override her without even having to talk to us about it. For example, back to the abortion thing, we stood our ground, but then the legislature keeps trying to chip away with little backdoor, bills and things like that. And, the governor's standing in the way and vetoing them, but they can override her. So we have a unique opportunity to break a supermajority in both chambers. We're one of the few states, I think there's only 3 of us that actually are close to doing that. We won't be in the majority yet. We'll get there though. But we can break that supermajority and protect our governor and make sure that we're protecting the values in Kansas. So that on November 5th, that's what we're looking to do. That'll be the next story I'm looking for people to tell about Kansas.
I love that. And we're going to have to get with you because I'm looking at our documentation, and it looks like we may be missing one of the women that you have running for office. So I'm going to have my team reach back out to your team to make sure we have captured every single person. We have 17, so we're doing good, but we can't leave anyone behind. I've asked the question in terms of what you want to bring. How is this message being received? Is this a vision that you're seeing Democrats embrace? Are they excited about this vision? I'm excited about it. I sure hope they are.
Well, here's what I will say. I learned this when I was running for Secretary of State. And I mean, I was out in Goodland, Kansas, and Liberal and Dodge City, places that people have never heard of. They were very receptive. The thing about Kansans, and I think this, I will say this, I believe about all Americans, we ultimately hold some values that are sacred and that they supersede gender and color and race and ethnicity and religious backgrounds. We all want the same things. And so the people of Kansas were very receptive to me as the Secretary of State nominee and as the chair of the party. They are all unified. I am very, very proud to say that we have unified this party. I have, speaking of bold, I walked into a couple of pockets where Democrats were notoriously tearing each other apart. And I walked in there and said, okay, we're going to sit at the table and we are going to get this together. In 2 of our larger counties, we have, we call it our big 5, where you have to win these counties. 2 of them were at odds with each other, different reasons. But what I was never going to do and never will be doing is being afraid to walk in the room and say, all right, cut the mess. Cut the mess. We have got to be unified. And to their credit, let me credit the good Democrats of Kansas. They were receptive. I think they were waiting for leadership. People
I was just about to say that. Yes, people are waiting for quality leadership that sees them, honors and respects them as the people that they are, and shares the values. Like you hit it out the park with that. I'm sorry, Simone, did you want to get back in here? Because I'll keep talking.
I'm like, yes. I'm like, I could do more. when I sit back and I listen and I hear about the values and the characteristics of how you show up, that not only you are mentoring, but also instilling in your daughter, as the country changes and as the national party continues to evolve, how do you think, or is there a lane for Kansas to really change this narrative on what the middle of the country, how we show up, the possibilities for us to turn out, and what that looks like? I know I am always advocating. I think some of these red states aren't as red as you think. They're red on their face. They have pockets where resources can be pushed into. Are there places where it's like, listen to Kansas, listen to these states? There's some messages that should be uplifted nationally.
I love you. You both need to come to Kansas when we're going on the road and get like the answer to that, I believe, is a resounding yes. And several things outside of my leadership, Kansas elects women in leadership positions. We've had 3 women governors in this state. Secretary, right. Yes, former Governor Kathleen Sebelius was President Obama's Health and Human Services Secretary on his cabinet. We have Governor Laura Kelly currently. But in addition to that, part of the reason is that I'll just say, I think women are very common sense centered. By the nature of the things that we do as women, we tend to find the common ground and the common sense. And Kansas is very common sense centered. Even our conservatism is common sense. And if there's a lesson for the nation in that, it's that, listen, we understand that there are views across the spectrum, to the right and to the left, and all those views need to be respected. But the vast majority are in the middle. That's where the common part comes through. And then the sense part comes into the values. These are our shared common sense. Another term for that is shared values. And that's what Kansas does. And what I think will happen in November when we break the supermajorities and show that what Kansas is looking for is balance, that will be reflected, I believe, in the rest of the country. We're looking for balance. Again, common sense is a synonym for shared values. And that's what we're doing here in Kansas. And I really believe that's what we showed people on August 2nd, 2022. That's what we're going to show people on November 5th, 2024.
Absolutely. Listen, you have inspired us. You have informed us. You have helped us break myths. The least we could do is talk about how we can give a little bit of value back. Please tell us how we can support you. If you have any activities, events, or volunteer opportunities coming up, let us know how we can engage Kansas Dems.
Well, thank you so much. We need money. This is and I told you, when I say to people, be bold, I'm bold. There is no one I don't ask for money. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. I wish we had complete campaign finance reform, but we don't. And if I'm not willing to ask and say that your values are where your dollars are, then I can't ask anybody else to do it. So we have a great Act Blue page, and those donations will go to the state party. It helps us build up the staff that we can put on the ground to help get the word out. It helps us with our candidate support, candidate training, and it helps us do what the ultimate goal is, which is to get that common sense into our state legislature and break the supermajority. So I believe my team was going to send you our Act Blue link, but I will say this, and I mean this, every dollar counts. For those of you who think, for people who think, hey, I just don't have to give, if you give a one-time donation of $5, if everyone who is a viewer of your podcast gave $5, that would make such a big difference. If you can give a recurring donation of $5, and by the way, if you can give me 50,000, I'll take it too. But there's no amount too big or too small. But we would definitely appreciate anybody who wants to get on the train and look with us on November 5th and say, look what we did. That $5 will be a part of what we did. So thank you for that.
And listen, every big goal starts with these small steps. I personally want to encourage everyone listening to this podcast to go to kansasdems.org, hit the donate button, be a part of this big change. This is the kind of leadership that we support. This is the kind of leadership that we say, you know what? This isn't something I was thinking about before, but today I understand why it's so important for me to get involved. So make sure you go to kansasdems.org and you donate. And then once you've done that, post on social media that you've donated to Kansas Dems and let them know that there's an opportunity for them to donate too. Listen, before we close out, you have been such an inspiration. I want to end as we have been throughout this conversation and ask you, what advice do you have for those young people who are looking at what you've done? And by the way, I just want to say, not only has she been representing for Black people and we talk about that here, especially on this show, but I want to say that her board of officers looks like a panoplia of Americans. It is everybody from doing everything, because we are everywhere. And when I say we, I mean every type of identity that you can think of exists in all the different spaces. And I love the fact that Kansas is leading the way and leaning into that. I also love that you invoked its history about being a freed slave, part of Missouri Compromise, and how you continue to live those values. Because in the end, you know what? You're right. That's who Kansans really are. So tell us inspirational words for those young people who may be getting a little bit too much conservative viewpoint that makes them question themselves, makes them question their identity, their personhood, maybe makes them question whether or not there's a place for them in Kansas politics. What do you say to them?
I will say thank you for the question, first of all. And I know we're going to wrap up, but I am just so honored to be here with both of you, beautiful, strong Black women. Thank you for your voice. Let me say that. So here's what I answer when I talk to Kansas young Dems. I say to them this: you are our future. You are our hope. Not only do you matter, we're all counting on you. And the change that we all care about rests inside of you. We're waiting for it to come out, and I will do everything I can to help seed and water that ground. But what I say to young people is that you are the hope of all of us. Now, my parents told me it was my responsibility. So I'm trying not to beat people down too much with that. But what I do say to them is it is your responsibility. It is yours. It belongs to you, but you are our hope. And then I will do everything I can to help foster and grow that.
I want to clone you and put you in at least 4 or 5 more states. I absolutely love you, Chair Repass. Thank you so much for being a part of our conversation today. I want to remind you as we close out, remember our call to action. And it's not that hard, this podcast. Our call to action is to support kansasdems.org. Go to kansasdems.org and support them. Support the good work they're doing. Let them know that you value representation. Let them know that you value fundamental freedoms. Let them know that you see them and that you are looking for them to be the example that they have historically been for this country on what it looks like to value humanity. I could not be more pleased to have had this conversation. We want to remind you to follow us at all the places that you get the podcast, but especially on our YouTube channel. We are trying to get our followership up. We get all these people who watch us, thousands of people watch and listen to us, and then they don't hit the follow button. I don't know what that's about. Make sure you subscribe so you don't have to wonder when we drop new episodes, so you know when it is happening. Chairwoman Repass, it's been a pleasure. Simone, thank you as always for being my partner in good trouble this evening. We'll be back and dropping more gems on Clapback Get the Facts podcast next Thursday. Bye.
Thank you for joining us here on Clapback Get the Facts podcast. We hope that you're leaving feeling more informed and ready to provide others with the facts. We would love to hear your biggest takeaways from this episode. So post the show on your Instagram story and tag us at Sisters Lead. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, please leave a review so others can get some sense of the facts that we're providing. Finally, if you would like to learn more about local resources and other projects we're working on, go to sistersleadsistersvote.org.